and I think we have started.
Yep.
International multi-award winning book Suffering Ends When Awakening Begins is an inspirational self-transitional memoir about his life and the challenges which he faced and overcame. Just a few mentions of some of the events that he went through at age 11. His mother devised a premeditated murder plot to murder him and his two siblings. He ran away, lived on the street, was sexually abused, got involved in selling drugs. At 19, his best friend, girlfriend, were killed in a car accident. Homeless at age 45 with wife and four small children. This is just part of the story we are about to hear today from a very interested and extraordinary man, Robert Crown. Welcome to Let's Talk Purpose. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me, Irvin. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure and a privilege. Let's get into the interview. Who is Robert Crown?
Robert Crown is actually my pen name that I use for my book because I didn't want to use my regular name because my mother is still alive, so I didn't want to bring her any harm or hard feelings from people. Um, I wrote the story about my life, about the hardship, adversity, and suffering I went through. We all go through hardship, adversity, and suffering in our lives. Some people might think mine is extreme. Others, that I look at, some other lives, it seems like nothing compared to what other people went through. But it's all relative for us in our journey to like awaken. I went through when I was little. The time from when I was born, my parents separated after my birth for a year. I grew up in a dysfunctional family. At age 5, I had severe asthma from vaccines that I got when I was a child, and I had a double hernia when I was 5 years old, and the doctors thought I was going to die. They told my mother to pick out a coffin for me before the surgery. When I was 11 years old, like you mentioned in the intro, my mother devised a premeditated murder plot to kill me and my two siblings at our home where we used to reside. And then after that, and you have no idea what kind of effect that has on you when you're growing up. I was 11 years old. I was just a little innocent, naive boy. I had no idea what was going on in life, and you have no idea how that affects you. And back then in 1973, um, we didn't go to any therapy. We didn't have any counseling back then. We just kind of swept it under the rug and went on with our lives. But that really destroys you as a child, because if your own mother doesn't love you, and she wants to kill you, then who's going to love you, right? So the love you have for yourself is non-existent, and your self-worth, your self-esteem, your confidence, all of that stuff is non-existent. You have no self-worth. You feel worthless. So that's kind of how I went through my life through my teenage years. I ended up running away from home when I was 15 because I took my mom's car out for a joyride with my friend, and I ended up totaling it out, one of the many car accidents that I've been in. And I left from just outside Chicago, Illinois, with 20 bucks in my pocket and hitchhiked all the way down to Florida, to Daytona Beach, Florida, where I basically lived on the streets and got involved with some people that were selling drugs and was sexually abused by them as well. I aged a lot through that experience. I didn't know what the man told me when I first got down there, but he said, "You're going to age a lot." And I didn't understand what that meant, but I certainly did when I went back home. Then finally, after that, and when I was 19, I fell in love for the first time. I haven't really experienced, even though maybe my mother did love me or my siblings, but you certainly didn't feel like it, right? Because of what happened. And so subconsciously, I know I didn't feel it. So it was really a great feeling to have somebody that really cared about you and loved you. And I did manage to function. I also had a really good friend of mine too, and we decided to all go out one night, make a long story short, and we got run off the road by a driver. And my best friend got killed in the car wreck. And my girlfriend, who I dated for 10 months, after I decided earlier that month, the month before in April, I was going to ask her to marry me on her birthday in June. So she was killed, and I suffered a broken femur from the accident. So that's just part of it. I was also involved in a few other major car accidents, a boat accident, two motorcycle accidents. I also was involved with later on in my life. I got remarried, fell in love again at 25, got married, had 4 kids, and we, had turbulent times with the financial situation, and we ended up losing our house eventually when the markets crashed in '07. So we were homeless for a while then. But at that point, a friend of mine gave me the book, The Secret, told me about the movie The Secret, and I didn't know anything about it. And so I watched it for the first time. And when I started watching it, it kind of resonated with me a little bit, and it started making sense to me. And that's kind of when my eyes began to open, and my journey really began to awakening, like to who I really am and about what was going on in my life. And it helped me understand things, even though it took me a long while from there to get to this point here where I am right now. And it's still a journey. I've still noticed that there's still things that I thought that I healed, right? But I didn't. And I'm still going through some stuff, and you still need to heal from it. But um, one of the things I realize is that everything in our life happens for a reason. And we can say that easily. So if you give me $20, it was, oh yeah, I needed $20 today to pay a bill or go out and get some food or whatever. Or, oh, I get in a little car accident. Well, I know nobody's hurt, everything happens for a reason. But when we start pushing the envelope and we start talking about people that we love and people dying and all that, it's a little bit harder for people to hang on to that belief, right? But I truly believe it is, because the whole story about Carol dying and the way that it all happened, and she basically saved my life. She sacrificed her life for my life so that I could live, and I hung on to that a lot throughout my life to get me through a lot of tough times. So yeah, everything does happen for a reason to get us to a certain point in our life.
How does somebody recover after the ordeal in the fact that your mother wanted to kill you? How
Uh,
could you recover?
Yeah, it's really difficult. The first thing is for me is that I didn't understand what was going on, because after that, my parents ended up getting a divorce about a year or two later, and I would bounce back and forth. Right, it all came out in like behavior problems with me. I started rebelling against authority, started ditching school. I would get into fights. People would pick on me. I would get bullied. Then I would start fighting back. My relationships with people were, I had walls up, like castles around me so that people couldn't get in. I wouldn't let anybody in. I didn't have good relationships with people at the time. So it's very hard. And I didn't really realize what was going on, or where was all this coming from. I didn't understand that at the time, that this is what's happening, because when you go through something like that, some kind of trauma like that, it compartmentalizes in your mind, right? So then later on in life, something happens similar to that, and it triggers it. For example, when I met my wife, she wanted to surprise me, and she took us out to a hotel in Chicago to stay and have dinner at that a night on my birthday. And that kind of triggered something in me, and I started getting like really nervous and anxious. And because when my mother tried to murder us, she said that you guys aren't going to school today, we're going to go see a show instead. So I thought, all right, we're going to go see a show, right? We're all excited. And then she turns out to try to kill us. So the same thing that happened with my wife when she wanted to take me out somewhere, I felt that like that was a trigger, right? And I didn't really even understand then what was going on, because I thought I was fine. But once you start digging, you go in your life, and then you see these patterns, right? And every time we have a pattern, that's a paradigm is a pattern. And these paradigms, when these come up, this means that there's a program running in your subconscious mind. So there's something in your subconscious that's running, whether it's in relationships, or if you ever hear people saying, well, this always happens to me, or my mother always does this to me, or I always get fired from my jobs, or I always find these kind of people in my relationships. Well, this is the pattern, right? So there's a program that's running in your subconscious mind that needs to be corrected. So that's really the cause of it. And what you need to do to correct it, everybody's different on where they're at. You have to reprogram your subconscious mind, and you can do that through repetition. You can do it, by writing. I mean, there's things that you can do to help reprogram your subconscious minds, because you have to rewire it. You have to create a new neural net connection in your brain and thicken that one, and then the old pattern will eventually break away.
And how has that process been for you?
It's been an interesting process. I mean, I'm still learning stuff from it today, believe it or not. I mean, about my past lives. So it was, if I look back on my life, I mean, would I change anything? The only thing I would change is if I had a deeper understanding about what was happening at the time it did. Because if I did, my whole life would have been changed back then. I would have gone through things from a different perspective. Now, if something like that happened, I have a totally different understanding about things right now. It's a totally different perspective that you look at the eyes through, right? So if we try to stay implanted in this 3D reality and not really try to look any beyond this of like who we really are, right? Like we have divinity within us, right? So if we don't look beyond that, it's hard to get past that point. If we look deeper into ourselves, look into our heart, look into our soul, and understand who we really are, we're divine beings, multidimensional beings, and we're here for a purpose on earth, then, this will help us through. If we can reconnect with that higher aspect or that God aspect within ourselves, this will help us, give us something to hold on to and pull us out of this reality and give us a different perspective on how to look at things.
You said you spoke about the fright that you would have received when your wife wanted to carry you out for dinner, and how it triggered something in you. Are there any other moments that you could share that you realize that it's like a trigger from the past, that's something that you need to work on?
Yeah, and that's really like PTSD. Kathy O'Brien talks about it a lot. She was a ritual satanic abuse survivor, and what happens when they go through trauma is that trauma gets compartmentalized in their memory. So just like a little box, right? So you got all these little storage boxes. Every time you go through trauma, it's like a little box there. You're storing it away, right? If you don't work it out. So every time you go through something or some kind of an event that will trigger that, open that box up, then you're going to react the same way until you're able to work that out. She talks about being able to write stuff out. She did a really good book about it. Yeah, I would recommend reading that. I think it's called PTSD Time to Heal, if I'm not mistaken. But writing things out, and you got to be really careful the way you do things and how you approach it, depending on what's triggering you, so that you don't exacerbate your situation and make it worse. So you want to do it methodically, carefully, um, but you need to go through it, and you need to kind of revisit that. And kind of what I did, is kind of, I just kind of went back and revisited that 11-year-old boy, and comforted the boy and tell him that it's okay. It's nothing against you. You're loved. And, this was just something to help you grow. And, your mother doesn't really hate you, so, yeah.
And that has been a process, I believe, over the years, in terms of your relationship with your mom and getting over that trauma and all those you know accidents that happened in the past.
Yes, yeah. My mother and we get along great now. I mean, she comes over for the holidays. We go over there. I visit her, talk to her. It's just exchanging emails with her yesterday. So, yeah, our relationship is fine. It's stronger than ever. And yeah, it's It's not really an issue for me. I know when I do some interviews and talk about it, people get upset and they get mad at my mom, because it's like it's where we're at in our understanding. My understanding back then and even 13 years ago, 5 years ago is a lot different than it is right now. My understanding about things and what's going on in the world is totally different than it was before.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous that you could have a heart of forgiveness, and your love for your mom is very strong, because um you would also understand that she would have been going through some stuff also. She was not in a mental state of mind to make a good rational decision. She thought that that's the best thing to do was probably to get rid of you, your siblings, just to save you from pain and horror. But I'm happy that that relationship has been mended and going stronger now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the whole key there is that we have to understand what she was going through too. I mean, she started having children when she was 16, and me having four children now and thinking how old they are. My daughters, the youngest is 18. And I can't imagine her having a baby at 18. They're still developing, their selves spiritually, mentally, and physically. And it's like and I was the second child born, so she had me when she was just 19 years old. So she was really a young mother. She had my older sister, and then she also had a miscarriage. So there was a couple really before me. So, and then plus the pressure of her living with her in-laws. They were all living together, and my paternal mother did not like her, so that all added the pressure. And she had issues when she was younger. Her father died at a young age, and all of that. I mean, obviously, it's no excuse, right, for what had happened, but we have to try to understand and have some understanding in our lives, especially today, right? With what's going on in the world, when people are really trying to destroy humanity, we got to try to have an understanding, but we also have to have some love. And we have to kind of, even though that was a horrible thing, we got to kind of stick up for ourselves. It took me a while before I could even ask her, maybe in 2012, why did you decide to try to kill me, and your two daughters? So
What
and I,
response?
pardon me.
What was her response?
She said that when she was living with her parents, her in-laws, that she couldn't take it anymore, and that her parents said things to her. Her in-laws said things to her that just devastated her, and it just made her snap. And being a young mother and having a broken childhood herself, when her father died when she was 8 years old, she never healed from that. So she couldn't handle it anymore and didn't know what to do, and she went to kill her children. So
I I'm happy that you're alive today. I'm happy that it did so, and
it's
I'm happy that you were able to now write a book. Tell us, how did that happen? How you wrote this book?
okay. That's a good question. Well, it all happened. My wife and I at the time, we had like a little hiccup in her marriage, and because of the issues that I had because of trust, right, and betrayal from my mother, it hit me a lot harder than other things in my life. So she was communicating with an old friend from high school, and one thing led to another, and we ended up going to marriage counseling. And when I was in marriage counseling, I was talking to the counselor, and she said, "Well, you sound kind of angry. Let me why don't we have a one-on-one session?" So I went in, talked to her for an hour. I laid out my whole life story within an hour. And after an hour, I just said, back up for a second. I should tell you that after that happened with my wife, I didn't really care anymore about life. I couldn't take it anymore, okay? I didn't care if I lived or died. I didn't care about my job. I didn't care about my marriage, nothing. I just kind of let everything go. And so my wife suggested to go to the counseling. So then after I told my life story to the counselor, Jokingly, I asked her, I said, have you ever heard of anybody going through as much as I have? She said, Robert, I've counseled dysfunctional families. I've counseled addicts, gang members, people in prison, and I've never heard of anybody going through as much as you have. And after that, that's when I said jokingly, well, then maybe I should write a book, because if people could read about my life, and they would feel much more better about their own life, it'll give them faith, hope, and courage to overcome the challenges that they face. So as soon as I said that, this flame inside of me just kind of like whoosh, it reignited like in my gut. And it's kind of like when you're in the emergency room on the operating table, and you draw on a flat line, beep, and then they get the paddles and they go clear, and then you come back to life. That's kind of how it was for me. I kind of came back to life, and I wasn't a writer, at all. It was very difficult for me to write, actually, and so I wasn't sure like how I was going to get this book out. And I'm thinking, man, maybe I need to write this book. I'm feeling life again. So I go home, and I'm looking out the window, and there's a big oak tree across the street, and I'm going, okay, God, if you want me to write this book, then let a branch fall off that tree right now. And so I'm looking at the tree, and I see a little branch hanging, right? But that was it. It was a beautiful day out, right? And it was going to be a beautiful day the next day, nice blue sky, no storms or wind or anything. So after that, I went to bed, and in the morning I got up, walked past the window, and took a second look, and I looked across the street, and I could not believe what I saw. There was a limb about this big round, about 12 feet long, just laying right under the tree, right on the sidewalk. And I go, oh my gosh, I need to write this book, you know? So I got goosebumps right now. Yeah, so that was a really powerful statement. So I figured that, yeah, I better write it. So it took me 6 years to get it out there, and that's what I did.
Senior review by Mamta Madhavan. It said in this book, Robert Crown not only shares his intensity of his outer life story, but also the intimacy of the inner journey he took as a spiritual warrior, determined to be victorious through an evolution of consciousness from the inside out. You you have a name for this book that's very peculiar. Suffering ends when awakening begins. Was that your idea? Was that the publisher's idea to name that book?
It,
Why
it
did
was it was my idea to the title, because I felt it was so apropos for my journey. Because when I was going through life, I was in so much hardship, adversity, and suffering in my life. Everything I did, I would always get in trouble. Things would never work out for me. My parents, all the car accidents that I was in, the fights, not getting along with people, and I didn't have a clue of like who I was, or what I was doing here in life. I felt like I was an outsider. And the moment that I begin to start going inside of myself and thinking about like who I am and my life, and more about like where did I come from and why am I here, and who am I? When I started to awaken to all of this and the true reality to the world, it was looking from a different perspective. So once I got this different perspective from my higher self, I began to understand that the suffering that I went through in my life, like as I was mentioning before, as soon as we make that connection, started to dissipate. And to me, it was an easy title. I know people don't like it because it's long, but it really makes sense. And I think really it holds true for the world, because if we begin to awaken what's going on in the world today, people's suffering will end. But if we remain asleep, if I remained asleep throughout my whole life, I would have never awakened, and my suffering would have continued. In the 5,000-year-old Bhagavad Gita, they talk about, when people go through suffering in their life, they don't even question it. And it's like when we go through suffering in our life, it happens for a reason. And the reason is to help us awaken to who we really are. to help us awaken to this Godhead within, to the divinity within, that we are a powerful being, and that we have to stop with this victimizer mentality that's kind of been placed over us, and realize who we really are. And when we can start realizing things from a different perspective, then we have something else to hold on to. Like for myself, and I know a lot of people that I talk to, when we go through life, it's kind of like, we're given these set of rules to believe and all of these things. And, it's kind of like jamming a square peg in a round hole. Yeah, you can get it to fit, but, something doesn't feel right. It's just not right. It's not kosher. It doesn't make sense. So when we begin to awaken to these things in our life and to ourselves, then like our suffering will stop. I'm not saying that people aren't going to go through hardship in their life. What I am saying is that when we go through things in our life and we're more awake than we were before, it doesn't seem like hardship anymore. We take a totally different look at it because our attitude's different. One of the things that I've come to understand is that we're co-creators of our own reality, right? Our thoughts create our reality. People create their reality for themselves, whether it's by default or intention. So if I'm going through all this suffering in my life, it's partly because of me, right? The way that I'm thinking about myself and things in life. So I'm attracting all of that negativity into my life. And as soon as I begin to learn how to think properly, okay, and realize who I am and keep my vibration up above baseline, then things are going to change for me. But if I'm always down here, because we're energy beings, so if I'm vibrating at a higher level, then I can change things. If I'm vibrating down here at baseline or below baseline, I'm not going to change no matter what. So if I'm complaining, I'm judgmental, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm hateful, I got all these negative feelings, we're just going to get more of that. We're not going anywhere. It's like being on a hamster wheel. And I've done that. Even though we want to change our life and we have the desire to change, you're not going anywhere. You might get a temporary change, but buddy, you better buckle up because you're in for a long ride. Okay. You got to change. And in order to change that, you need to do some work, but you got to realize who you are and how powerful your thoughts are. My whole thing is that I've been going through lately is I realized that, when we come into this world, it's kind of like the system stacked against us. In 2005, National Science Foundation came out with an article stating that we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day. 80% of those thoughts are negative. 95% of those thoughts are from the day before. So if 80% of our thoughts are negative and we're thinking the same thoughts we did from yesterday, how are we going to change? How are we going to change? If we're kept in fear by COVID and all this other stuff, our fear is a lower vibration. How are we going to change? And what happens when we're negative or when we're fearful? We give our power away. We want somebody else to solve our problems for us. Okay, so we become disempowered and we have no more control over our life. So we have to claim our power back and take our power back and change our life by controlling the way that we think. Our thoughts are so powerful that people have no idea like who they really are. Humanity has been lied to about our history, about who we are, and about what's happening in this world. Let me give you a great example about how powerful your thoughts are. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Masaru Emoto, Messages from Water. But what this gentleman, Japanese researcher, did is he would take water crystals and he would use photographs, music, prayer, words, vibrations. And then after he exposed the water to this, he'd freeze it and put it under a microscope. And this is just one example, okay? So this is what he did with the word I can't, okay? This is how the word I can't came back. All right? So that's I can't. Now, this is the word I can. I can. I can't. I can. I can't. I can. So if we're thinking I can't, then we're going below baseline. Okay. So let's say you want to be one of the top podcasters in the world. Okay. From Trinidad, millions of listeners on your podcast. So you got this thought and this intention of doing that. You make this intention with is so firm that nobody's going to get in your way, right? So you create that image in your mind and you attach that emotion to it, like, oh, I'm so excited of this is going to happen. But the moment you begin to say, I can't, you just took a step backward and you got to start all over again. Okay. And this is kind of what I did my whole life. It's just like you're positive, then you're negative. You're positive, you go forward, then you're negative. You're positive, and then you're negative. So every time it's kind of like planting a seed in the garden, right? We plant a seed in the garden and we're watching it grow. We go out, we water it, we give it sunlight. The next day we go out there, nothing's happening. We take it out to see if it's growing. Nope, it's not growing. Then we put it back. And every day we do that, it's the seed's never going to grow. Okay. So we have to be careful on like how we think. This right here is a great example of how our minds are being programmed because people
Okay.
don't realize how powerful their thoughts are. And if people start to begin to realize how powerful they are and that they can manifest stuff in their life if they try a happier life, then the whole world's going to change. But right now we were kept in such a low vibration of fear and worry and all of these things that keep us vibrating so low. So we really have to change our thoughts in the way that we think.
Even the Bible would say, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you would say that you had to adjust your thinking in order to um, become awakened, to realize what I'm going through. There's a purpose for it, and the name of the podcast is Let's Talk Purpose. So you're not sleeping, as you mentioned, to what you are suffering. You are coming alive to it, and because you are now awakened, now you are figuring out, okay, there's a reason for what I'm going through. And I'm so happy that you were able to connect and go through all your hurts. Because I mean, everybody been through hurt, but you've been through a fair amount of hurt,
Yeah,
life changing situations. You were able to bring that together over the course of 6 years, write it down in a series of chapters and sequence it, all that you've been challenged with, and now you are presenting it to the public and saying, hey, I know that you're going through some stuff. I've been through something too. And here is my encouragement to you. That's wow.
that's a,
That's powerful.
that's
I'm
a
so happy.
definition of a spiritual warrior for me. That's a definition of a spiritual warrior, like Michael Beckwith said. It's I'm if I didn't do it, I mean, I would be remiss. I mean, it's kind of like I would be missing my purpose. I mean, I learned so much. I don't mind opening my life up to people. I mean, if it can help them overcome something in their life, or give them hope, to live another day. I mean, there's days, after my girlfriend died, a couple months later, I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to kill myself. I poured all those pills out in my hand, my prescription I just got filled with painkillers, and I'm just looking at them, right? And I started thinking about the events that had happened. And I realized that day that she sacrificed her life for me just because of the way everything played out. And I said, if I kill myself now, then she's going to die in vain, right? So there has to be some other purpose for me in life. And I think for people, what they need to realize is that they're never going to get anything in their life more than they can handle. So no matter how hard you think you may be, how low you think you have gone, or how you don't think you can get back up anymore, I'm here to tell you, you can. Okay, you can. So no matter how low you are, you can go lower. Okay. So that's where I thought I was at my lowest point, and then the floor gave out, and I went down a few more floors. But I handled it. I didn't know how I did it, but I did. You just don't give up hope. You believe in yourself and realize that this is all happening for a reason. So you have to be able to put all that out and just don't go through your day. Start researching. And don't stick with the crowd, okay? Because the crowd is going to lead you in the wrong direction. Start doing things on your own and taking care of yourself. You have to be able to believe in yourself, okay? you can handle this. I believe, this is what I believe before I come into this, do for me, right? Okay, Robert, this is what you got this lifetime. Okay, we're gonna your parents are going to be separated. You're going to grow up in a dysfunctional family. Your mom's going to try to you're going to almost going to die in surgery. Your mom's going to try to kill you and your sisters when you're 11. And we know how strong you are spiritually, so this isn't going to be a problem for you. We just want to check your limitations and make sure you can overcome this. And then when you're 15, you're going to run away by yourself, be gone for months, and be sexually abused. And then everything in your world for you, the first person that falls in love with you and your best friend, we're going to take those people away from you and then see how you do after that. And then, if you make that, then we're going to let you fall in love again and then have a family. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take all your materials away and put you people out on the street and then see how you fare with that. And, that's the thing. So I said, okay, no problem. I can handle that. I know who I am. I know how powerful I am. I can overcome all that. But the thing is, when we're born in this world, we don't understand how powerful this material civilization is, or how fun it could be and beautiful it can be, and we get distracted. So we come away from who we really are, and then we lose track, or the material civilization takes us away, or we're having too much fun. But then this is why we go through hardship, adversity, and suffering in our life, to get us to stop and to think about these questions, about who we are and why we're here. And once we do, then we can slowly begin to awaken to who we really are. And then we can give back. We can complete that hero's journey and give back to other people and use our experience so that people don't have to suffer unnecessarily, through hardship, adversity, and suffering. And hopefully something that I say, or you yourself, Irvin, or all your podcasts can trigger something in people will say, hey, yeah, that kind of resonates with me. Let me try that. Or, let me start thinking more positive, or whatever the case may be. There's no need to suffer. And if all we have to do is start learning how to think properly, keep our vibration higher above baseline, and then things that will begin to unfold with us. And we have to believe in ourselves. This is the biggest thing.
Suffering Ends When Awakening Begins by Robert Crown is an inspiring story that chronicles the author's journey through the valley of the shadow of death and his emergence. The book is uplifting and have a positive impact on the lives of the readers. Even in some small way, it can make it better. Robert, the reason why I really had this idea, this vision in my heart to start podcasting is being a listener. And then I wanted to add value to the world. And I wanted to meet extraordinary people like you to speak to whatever audience I may have and to the world and to share your story. And you did just that today. You
Well,
came on, you've been very positive, and your energy level is so high, um, and you transcended it through your story. And I am privileged today. I am so happy today that we were able to have this podcast. You were
well,
saying,
I thank you very much, Irvin. But really, it all comes back to you, my friend, right? Because if you didn't have the courage, or the wherewithal to stand up and decide what you want to do with your life and to get messages out to the world, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. So thank you for recognizing that in yourself, and want to improve the quality of somebody's life and the world as well. So thank you.
tell Robert Crown. He has a website. If you need to get more information concerning the book is the reader's favorite book award winner, robertjcrown.com. You'll get all the information concerning him. You will even have him as a speaker. Um, that's his website, and the book is available on Amazon. It's been the 2019 Book Awards first place prize, national Indie Excellence Award. So the book is very recognizable internationally, and it's to you.
Well, I thank you very much for having me. And I just want to let people know your thoughts create your reality. You're the co-creator of your reality, and you can create the life that you want. Don't believe the mainstream. Your soul knows this, your soul knows it. And the proof is right here, right? Every time you say, I can't, you're right, you can't. Every time you say, I can, you're right, you can. And you can do anything you want with your life. So go out and do it. Thank you for having me.
I could not have said it better. You can do anything that you want with your life. Just go out and do it. Robert, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to make a request. I want to speak with you again. I love this interview. I definitely would like to talk to you again. I know that you have a lot more in the tank to release. And let's do this again.
Please, my pleasure. It would be my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Wish
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
success on your and more books in the future to come.
Thank you.
You have a good one. God bless.
Thank you.